I'm Jason Howell, and I've had the OnePlus 13 for nearly 3 weeks now, and let me tell you something, this phone's seen some shit. I tortured this device 7 ways to Sunday, all in an attempt to put the new IP69 rating to the test for you. Now, before I show all the ways I tortured my OnePlus 13 here, quick disclaimer, OnePlus did send me this device for review. OnePlus gets no say in my editorial content. If you want to know more about my ethical foundation for this channel, you can hit up the link in the description below. Okay, so first, let's just get real clear on what IP69 rating actually means, because you hear these numbers thrown around, and it's a good idea to kind of make sense of it. It makes sense actually to start with IP68, which has really been the go-to rating for high-end smartphones for many years now. You've probably seen it on your smartphone marketing at some point, and it's provided some solid protection for users, but it's important to understand what those numbers actually mean. Well, the 6 says that the device is completely protected against dust, and the 8 represents water resistance. Now that word is key, not proof, but resistance. And typically, this means an IP68 rated device can survive when submerged in fresh water up to 1.5 meters in depth for around 30 minutes. So if you're prone to dropping your phone in the toilet, hopefully before you've used it, or in the pool, or you get caught out in a major rainstorm, that device should be fine given you dry it off relatively quickly afterwards. So then, what exactly does it mean when your device is IP69 rated, like the OnePlus 13? Well, the 6 means the same, still protected against dust, but that 9 in place of the 8 means that the device can withstand high pressure, high temperature water jets. That is water being pushed toward the device in any number of directions. But not only that, high temperature water, high temperature steam as well. Now, it's also important to define high temperature, which in the case of IP69, that ceiling is placed at 176 degrees Fahrenheit, 80 degrees Celsius. And beyond that, you might actually have some problems. But, hot tubs, often around 104 degrees, dishwashers usually in the range of 130 to 140 degrees Fahrenheit. Washing machines often hit around 130 degrees as well. If you're cooking in the kitchen, that's where things get a little bit more complicated. Yes, IP69 rated devices can withstand splashes of those hot liquids, but dropping the device into a pot of boiling water is probably going to result in a bad day, as water boils at around 212 degrees Fahrenheit, 100 degrees Celsius. So you probably don't want to do that. So with all that backstory, consider that the OnePlus 13 is both IP68 and IP69 rated. So I decided to test out a few scenarios. First, me and my family headed out to one of our favorite local restaurants, Brewster's in Petaluma, who consistently have a pretty amazing holiday experience. I wanted to have the phone sit inside a cocktail for the duration of our dinner and had to settle for this little Santa mug, but sit in the cocktail it did until we pulled it out and actually headed right over to Santa's sleigh at the end of dinner for a picture with the onboard cameras. Turned out pretty great. Next, I decided to throw the OnePlus 13 into the top shelf of my dishwasher for cleaning. Germaphobes out there might be happy to know that you can do that, and this is proof right here. And again, remember, no hotter than 176 degrees. I made sure of that with my dishwasher. Everything turned out fine. 3, with a sparkling clean phone, I decided to undo it all by placing the OnePlus 13 into the deepest depth of our downstairs toilet. Now, don't worry, I cleaned it off before I did this, thankfully, but I ran 5 flushes in a row, pulled the phone out, and took it right to the sink, wasted no time polishing the phone with hand soap and water. Came out great. And finally, the washing machine. Now, I didn't leave it in for the spin cycle. I was a little concerned that it might pulverize the device. I want to clean the phone, I don't want to pulverize it. But once again, here's proof that you can actually do that if you so desire. Now, after all that, it came out just fine. And every time I pull it out of the water and activate the screen, it came right on. The improved ultrasonic fingerprint sensor worked even though the device and the screen was very wet, so that was really neat. Honestly, it's kind of nice to know that you can just toss a phone into the dishwasher every once in a while and give it a good deep cleaning if you really want to. And OnePlus says that this is the first major smartphone to release in the US with the IP69 rating. Now, of course, it's not the very first smartphone ever to carry that rating. The Vivo X200 series, the Oppo Find X8 series, the Realme GT7 Pro, they all carry IP69 certification, but none of those are particularly widespread brands in the United States. So I suppose OnePlus is probably telling a version of the truth there. But the IP rating is but one of many things to look forward to with the OnePlus 13. So what about the rest? Well, I'm happy you asked. But first, if you're finding value in this video, please hit that like button and subscribe as well so you don't miss any more like it. Thank you. All right, let's get to the rest of the review. So let's talk first about the design. I love to start with the design because it's the first thing that you really notice when you pick up a new smartphone. It has that refined, high quality touch that OnePlus's premium smartphones always seem to have nowadays. Right off the jump, it feels elegant. Black Eclipse has this glass wood grain inspired texture. And actually, if you recall the OnePlus 5, that I have somewhere here. This is a throwback. The case itself, this is a removable case with the wood grain. On the 13, it's kind of hard to see, but in person you can kind of see a little bit of the wood grain kind of patterning details, even though it is glass. So it's different, but it's kind of seems like it's a little bit inspired by that. And I will say it resists fingerprints pretty well, so it does a great job there. And then the OnePlus 12, which I also have laying around here. The OnePlus 12 has the little wraparound glass part right there. And that is now dropped here. So it's just the round circular camera housing. The wraparound part is kind of gone. And actually, I like it a lot better. It seems to pop out a little bit. Usual suspects, you've got your dual SIM down in the bottom. You've got your USB-C, of course. On the side, yes, the alert slider. So, depending on where that's at, either silent mode or vibrate or, full volume, that sort of stuff. Edges on the side and, the top and the bottom, everything flatter than what you saw with the OnePlus 12 that had a little bit of kind of like a contour to it. It's also notably thinner and lighter. And this is actually a big deal when you consider some of the hardware upgrades that I'm going to talk about here in a little bit. All right, so now the display, and it's a flat display this time, or flatter. It's not quite perfectly flat around the edges. There is a tiny bit of rounding, but again, not nearly as much as we've seen in the past. Definitely the trend in premium smartphones right now is to go flat on the display again, and OnePlus is there, and I appreciate that. It's a 6.82-inch QHD Plus Pro XDR display. It has that adaptive frame rate from 1 Hz to 120 Hz, adaptive with LTPO 4.1 technology in there, so you get better battery life as a result of that. You get a lower power consumption. Also has a peak brightness of 4,500 nits peak, and there's a good reason for that. It's called Radiant View technology. It's introduced for the first time here on the OnePlus 13, and it really improves viewing in different lighting conditions. In particular, if you're outside in direct sunlight, you will notice an improvement. They're not actually ramping up the total amount of brightness on the display necessarily, but instead analyzing and brightening, is that the right word? Individual pixels based on the content itself. And yeah, things look pretty good. If you're indoors, you're going to have a hard time, at least in my experience, seeing the difference between the two, but outdoors it definitely pops. HDR content looking excellent here. If you go to Instagram, for example, with this display and you kind of scroll through a normal Instagram feed, you will quickly realize the photos that were uploaded with HDR support versus not. And once you see the HDR photos on this display, everything else feels muted and almost inaccurate or incorrect, like it's an issue with the app. And it's not. It's just HDR tends to pop a lot more than non-HDR content. Some extra things that didn't exist before. Glove mode, which essentially aims to support touchscreen interaction if you're wearing a glove that is up to 0.5 centimeters thick. Now, some gloves are just out of the box, made to interact with touchscreens. Some gloves are not, and this is meant to kind of eliminate that gap between the ones that are meant to do that and not. Aqua Touch 2.0. And essentially this means better touch response when wet. I certainly tested this out when I put the device into the washer and into the dishwasher and everything, and then interacted with the touchscreen afterwards. Very interesting how easy it was to interact with the touchscreen even when it was dripping wet. Fingerprint sensor, like I said, in a pretty standard place. This is a newer, faster ultrasonic sensor. OnePlus optical sensors in years past have always been super fast, but less optimal for a number of reasons. They say this is 2 times faster than the S24 Ultra's fingerprint sensor. I did put that to the test and I didn't really see too much of a difference. You can see for yourself with the video here, but anyways, nonetheless, it's pretty fast. Performance-wise, I mean, you're gonna get excellent performance out of the OnePlus 13. It's got the Snapdragon 8 Elite chipset. So, I mean, as good as it gets in the Qualcomm Snapdragon realm anyways. That's coupled with 16 gigs of internal RAM. You have that excellent system on a chip. You have that high capacity of memory, and stuff absolutely flies. I mean, the operating system flies. It also has 2 vapor chambers for heat and cooling management. So gaming, of course, performing very well. No heating of the device that I could tell. You're not going to be hurting as far as performance is concerned on the OnePlus 13. Now, speaking of software, I'm a big fan of the direction of OxygenOS 15. You can actually see my deep dive into OxygenOS 15 on this channel. Just do a search for that here. You get smooth animations. There's like a fluidity to the operating system that I haven't seen in previous OxygenOS releases. It's really nice and fluid. A bunch of AI camera features, things like detail boost, so up-resing. When you zoom in, for example, and do a digital zoom and things start to break up and get blurry, you can up-res that with detail boost. There's also a reflection eraser, so you can remove reflections, unblur if there's a blurry part or a blurry face or something like that. And then, of course, other AI features, things like circle to search, AI notes. Another thing that you get here is, and we're going to be seeing this more and more on Android devices, is the split notification and quick settings panel. So normally it's been that if you swipe down from the top anywhere, you get this kind of conjoined version of the notifications and the quick settings together. Well, the new kind of method, the new approach here with Android, and OnePlus is implementing it here, is that on one side, it pulls your quick settings. On the other side, it pulls your notifications. And you might not like that. I mean, you can swipe between the two. Once you have one up, you can swipe to go between the two. I find, though, with one-handed operation, that if I pull it down, I don't always necessarily want my quick settings. I want the notifications, so it actually adds a step, and that can be a little annoying. But again, it's one of those things that it's early on. We're getting used to it, and probably in like a year, it's kind of like gestures. In a year, it'll just be the way it is, and you won't think twice about it. As far as update promise, 4 years of operating system updates, I'd say that's kind of weak compared to 7-year promise from Samsung and Google. All right, now battery, and this is really a standout feature. One big thing that OnePlus is doing with the OnePlus 13, and actually now that I think about it, the OnePlus Watch 2, there was a really heavy focus on battery, and they really knocked it out of the park with the OnePlus Watch 2. With the OnePlus 13, it's packing a 6,000 milliamp hour battery, which on its face is actually pretty large. It's the largest in any OnePlus phone to date, and yet this phone is really slim. It's pretty slim. Remember me talking about that earlier? Well, this is not packing a standard lithium-ion battery. It has a Silicon Nanostack battery, 10% silicon carbon composite anode. Blah, blah, blah. So, higher density battery, that means more capacity in less space. And that's pretty awesome. I mean, it really does, go the distance. I've been getting excellent battery life, of course, out of this sucker. I mean, it's just a huge amount of capacity. And then to have the slim profile along with that, excellent. I love seeing, these kind of advancements in battery technology. As for charging, it's rated at 80 watts for wired charging. That's 1 to 100% in 36 minutes. The included brick supports 80 watt charging out of the box. 50 watt wireless charging can be had with the AIRVOOC 50 watt magnetic charger. It's this little puck right here. This is definitely an extra accessory. This doesn't come in the box or anything. You have to pay extra for this. It does have like a noisy-ish fan once it's actually tapped on, but I put it on there. You can kind of see the light, but you can definitely hear it. Yeah, and it's pushing out air. And that is the wireless kind of magnetic charging. It just snaps right to it. It can be a little noisy, so maybe you care about that, maybe you don't. Also, in order for it to sit properly on the table, you have to like set it on the top and then display side down. Otherwise, this like little knobby thing right here, if you have it set the other way, it sits on the table really weird. So it's not perfect, but maybe I'm just not used to the whole magnetic charging thing because I haven't really had devices that do that before. So anyways, not my favorite method, but it gets you faster wireless charging speed. So if that's what you're looking for, I suppose it's not a bad trade-off. All right, now let's talk about the camera. OnePlus and Hasselblad are on their 5th year together. Oh, it's got to be so nice. At this point, the honeymoon has worn off. But this time around, all 3 cameras get the 50 megapixel treatment. So the main camera is a Sony LYT-808 1/14 inch sensor with f-stop 1.6 aperture. Then you've got an ultra-wide, an ISOCELL JN5 sensor with 120 degrees field of view, and then a telephoto, which is a Sony LYT-600 sensor with 3 times tri-prism design, which is actually pretty unique. If you compare it to periscope lenses, it's 24% smaller, 30% lighter, and can obtain a 73 millimeter equivalent focal length. Now, being a telephoto nut, I'm very pleased. I got some pretty solid pictures out of this. It was kind of one of my holiday cameras over the break. The telephoto gets 4x lossless zoom. Of course, when you get better lighting hitting the lens, some pretty solid performance there. Low light performance can be pretty good. It got some smearing, but for the most part, they've made some real nice gains in their low light performance on their cameras. Optical image stabilization is on board here as well. The macros with the ultra wide don't look like a potato because it used to be that OnePlus phones would include a macro camera and it was always just spec'd really poorly. And so now you can get macros if you use the ultra wide and things actually look good. And this is cool. All cameras, that is all the cameras on the rear, as well as the camera on the front, support 4K 60 frames per second video recording. So if you like all your video in 4K, man, this phone's going to give you 4K on every single lens that it has. So consider in that case the 512 gig storage version if that's of high priority to you. You're going to run out of space pretty fast if you don't. All right, so now my verdict. $100 price increase. And I think that's notable when you're talking about OnePlus. You get a lot for that though. You get the IP69 rating boost, you get a bunch of 4K cameras, an improved telephoto, a standout battery that allows for a nice thin device as a result. Not to mention the modern Snapdragon 8 Elite chipset. This really is a premium flagship top-of-the-line smartphone at this point. But like I said, it's $100 more. It starts at $900. And the model I'm testing is actually $1,000. It's $1,000. So it seems to me that the days of OnePlus being the flagship killer known for its price consciousness are effectively over. OnePlus sees itself as just as much of a flagship brand as Samsung and Google. That's not a bad thing, but it's definitely notable. I'm curious to know what you think. Leave a comment. Let me know if you are the right kind of clumsy to need an IP69 smartphone in your pocket, if you think OnePlus has gone in the right direction and that they deserve to be at the top of the heap as far as considering their phones to be flagships of this caliber. Leave a comment below and let me know. Thank you everybody so much for watching. I appreciate you being here and I'll see you next time. Take care everybody.